This is the first time we've properly spoken, but we see each other maybe every day.
Yes, definitely at the moment. I feel like every run that I go on, I see you flying past.
Well, no, I'm often chasing you, I think. There's few people that we come across in the park, or that I come across in the park, who covers the kind of mileage that you cover. I mean, like, regardless of what time I go running, you are there. So I don't know whether you've been there all day, or if you're or if we just happen to train at the same time. But I can count on seeing you pretty much every single time I'm in the park.
Yeah, I am there a lot. It is sort of the only place that I run at the moment as well. So,
what do you think most runners misunderstand about marathon training?
That it's meant to be really hard, and that training hard doesn't mean that the race will be easy.
That's a really good answer. So
Yeah.
do you love your training?
Yeah, I love the fact that it's, it's not just about the race, but it's about those like cumulative weeks of doing something difficult and keep on proving to yourself that actually you can do more than you think. There's a lot of marathon sessions. I've done 10 marathons now, that when I get the marathon session through on paper from my coach and I think, I can't do that. And then you go out and you give it your best go and you do it. And I think that process week after week is what makes sort of the marathon so special. And, it's sort of, putting yourself in that difficult position week after week that prepares you for the marathon being hard and being able to tolerate it.
I'm guessing that sometimes the session isn't achieved in the way that it's supposed to be carried out. Do you just put it in the rearview mirror straight away and just swallow it up and move on to the next one? Or does it play on your mind?
For sure. I think it's really important to look into the potential reasons why, whether there's, a literal reason as to why you might have not felt good on that day. Was it stress, the weather? Did you hit a session too hard earlier in the week? Is there something that you can actually break it down and be like, okay, look, there's something that I could change in the future that's, going to make this a little bit better. But then sometimes you just have a bad day, or sometimes mentally you just don't have it. And that's sort of like okay as well, but you've got to kind of give it your best go. Which then you can take forwards to the marathon day, because I think that a lot of people panic when on marathon day they don't feel fantastic from like kilometre 1, when actually it's just sort of about dealing with it and being adaptable. So yeah, I think that's something you can really take forwards from those marathon sessions that you maybe do sort of fail. And really interestingly, in some of my very early marathon blocks, I was set this one specific session that was a 30k progression run with 5k warm up and 5k warm down, going from just slower than marathon pace to the final 10k being quicker than marathon pace. And I never managed to complete it like successfully on paper, but that was the whole point. I later sort of said to my coach at the time, there's no way I'm essentially averaging 30k at marathon pace on my own in Bushy Park. And the point was not necessarily to actually complete it. It was to try.
And it's almost when you're really up against it in a session and it's not going your way, and the headspace isn't great, and you're off pace, and there's kind of nothing that can get you to the pace you're supposed to be at. Mm-hmm. I find those sessions really interesting to kind of hold on to, because it's almost certain that at some point in the marathon you will feel that way. Like in my experience, which is obviously nothing like yours yet, it's very likely that you'll come up against some form of that pain or some kind of wall that you're going to have to break down on the day. In training, I think pushing the harder times on the tired legs in the 30 degrees is just really good experience. Yeah,
100%. And I think, the marathon really is about, there are going to be peaks and troughs over that 42k. There's going to be patches, like we all know, you'll go from feeling absolutely amazing 1 second and thinking, I've totally got this, to then, 500 meters later, you think, I've got a stitch, like my gel's not gone down very well. Why do my legs feel heavy? But it's sort of working through that. And I think that those sessions in training where you don't quite hit it, but you carry on anyway, are the ones that really come forwards on marathon day. Because on marathon day, if you have one slightly dodgy kilometre that could actually be down to your GPS, or like actually a little bit of elevation that you weren't aware of, what are you going to do? Just stop.
Yeah.
Like you can't do that. So yeah, I think those sessions are arguably sometimes more important than the ones that you breeze through and just go super well.
And it kind of makes sense, right? When you look at stuff in that way, experiencing pain and suffering along the way to get to the goal, you'd imagine it makes sense to experience as much of that as possible.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that the best marathon runners or, ultra runners come from really being able to embrace and lean into that discomfort, really being able to expect it and to, when it does arrive, think this is exactly where I'm supposed to be and not fear it. And I think that that is definitely something that you can practice in training. I think especially like now more than ever in terms of shoes, supplements, there are so many things out there to make the training experience as like easy breezy as possible. Whereas actually going to a location or doing it in, shoes or the weather not being quite right is exactly what you need, because it's not meant to feel easy and smooth. It's meant to be difficult. You're preparing yourself to be able to sit in that discomfort for, 2 hours and 45 minutes, 2.5 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is, and be able to just be there. Once you kind of crack that code for the marathon, it's like, oh, okay. Even exposing yourself to things like, in my preparation for the European Championships, we knew it was going to be really, really hot, and I'd go and do my run, and then I didn't have access to a sauna because I was still at uni at the time, and I'd, lock myself in the bathroom and run a really, really hot bath and just sit in there for as long as possible, because yes, it was about the heat adaptation, but it was also about the tolerance to discomfort. And I think that that's something that often people miss is, it's not just about like the body, but it's about the mind as well.
Of all the marathons you've ran and all the races that you've participated in, have you ever just had a perfect experience?
Really interestingly, when I ran my marathon PB,
2:29?
Yes, I sort of started in the opposite state, in the sense of the day before I was convinced that I was coming down with the flu. I was, my mum and dad were getting me like lemon and ginger tea from the shops, and I was like, Mum, I don't know whether I'm going to make it round. I feel really unwell. So, hopefully I'll be able to get to a medical tent. If I do have to drop out, I'm really sorry, whatever.
Where is this? Sorry, where's home for you?
This was, this was at Manchester Marathon. Home for me is East Yorkshire, so near Hull. Yeah, so I sort of said, I don't know whether I'm going to be okay, whatever. So I set off on the race like not feeling good. But then I just didn't feel any worse, which was sort of fantastic, because then, I had no real high point of thinking, oh my God, I feel amazing, but I just didn't hit the wall at any point. And I, was ticking off the kilometers, got to 35K, it was like 7K to go, I can do this, I'm not feeling any worse. And that was sort of the reverse of that, where it wasn't like I felt amazing the entire time, but I just didn't feel, terrible.
That's pretty good. Do you believe that there's an element of running to feel? So the problem I find sometimes with chasing a time is that you know exactly what your pace needs to be. So you run, to that or slightly faster.
Yeah.
And do you ever feel more comfortable traveling faster than you're supposed to be going?
For sure. I definitely know what you mean, in the sense of especially marathon pace, because sometimes it's a bit of a funny pace to try and like hit and try and hold. And I do definitely think that there comes to tuning in with your effort is so important. I think there's no harm in like the old-fashioned way of sometimes just running to a stopwatch and running hard and running easy. And some of my best training when I was younger, I had no idea what paces I was running. I would go to the track and I'd only time my recoveries. And, for an 18-year-old, I went to run a 34:09 10K and a sub 75-minute half marathon doing that. And I think there is absolutely no harm in running hard when you're meant to be running hard, and running easy when you're meant to be running easy. And sometimes the stats can overcomplicate things, and then actually GPS dips out in part of Battersea Park and you think, I've got so hung up about this 3 seconds a K, and actually you don't really know what I'm running.
It's so funny, isn't it, thinking about that? When Alan Turing, who created the computer, when he was an amazing runner, he would have had no idea how fast he was running.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
It's weird, isn't it? It's like you wouldn't, not knowing. It would almost be such a thrill to just set off and run at a pace that you think is right.
Yeah.
What shoes do you favour when you're running a marathon?
Oh, the past few marathons I've worn the Fast R3s.
Yeah. The Pumas?
Yeah.
For the full marathon?
Yeah.
Do you find they give you any calf issues?
Afterwards, yes. But I'm definitely a 4-foot runner. I'm not a heel striker. So they definitely favour 4-foot runners. And once you kind of get into the rhythm of it, if you keep light on your toes, then it is fine. But they do hurt your calves the next day for sure.
I'm just like picturing you hobbling around. Yeah, it's I have a pair of Fast Stars now, and I've never worn them.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bust them out for a park run, I think.
Yeah.
Just to kind of have a crack. Are they all they're cracked up to be?
They're a really interesting shoe. I mean, I first wore them last year for London Marathon simply because I was part of the Project 3 initiative. So I had to wear the shoes, which was quite good in the sense of, it forced me to wear them. And I was actually like, do you know what? These are really, really, really good. But what I would say is that you need to be running really quick to get the benefit from them. And I actually chose to run Chicago Marathon sort of, 6 months later, last October, in the level down, like the Deviate Elite 3s instead, because you don't have to be right on your toes. It's not as quick of a shoe, but also it's a lot more comfy, and you can kind of like, alter your gait to be a little bit more natural perhaps, rather than being completely on your toes. Or anyway, that's what I find. I feel like shoes are so individual.
So we talk about a Puma Fast Star as a really fast shoe, and obviously, there's tech nowadays that translate to better performances. Do you think that people focus too much on making decisions around what shoes they should be wearing when they should just be banking miles?
Yeah, for sure. I think that it goes, not just for shoes, but for, equipment, tech, all that jazz as well, is that actually sometimes stripping it down to the basics and getting the running done is the most important thing. You can be thinking about getting the absolute perfect pair of shoes, but as long as it's comfy for you, it doesn't cause you any blisters, feels like it's, appropriate for the session that you're doing, whether it's intervals, an easy run, whatever, then that's the most important thing. It could be the fastest shoe in the world, but if it's going to, rip your Achilles open 2K into the marathon, then it's not the shoe for you.
We were talking about Achilles earlier. Yes. No, it kind of makes sense. I think it's nice when you find something that you feel great in.
Yes.
It just helps.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like you've, turned up to the fight with the proper gear.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's a massive thing about, not like the look good, run good, but it's more feel good, run good. And whether that's, having a matching race outfit or your shoes or whatever it is, then if you feel like you're, turning up, you wouldn't turn up for an interview in sort of like the clothes that you do gardening in, would you? So it's the same for a race.
I think dressing like a pro does help performance.
Yeah, I think if you feel good and you feel confident, and that's the most important thing as well, really, isn't it? It's confidence and belief in yourself, and whatever it is that you have to do to help that, then that's fine. It can look different for, lots of people, whether that's, sunglasses or whether it's, like for me, even just writing mantras on the back of my hand in a biro is something.
What do you write on your hand?
It depends on the day. It really.
Do you do that?
Yeah. I do it for sessions, everything.
Oh, go on, give us an example.
Block out the noise.
Yeah.
This is everything you ever wanted. It depends what it is. For the ultra that I did in Delhi, it was for Mum, Dad and Georgia, which is my sister.
Worth incorporating. Keep going.
Yeah. For Manchester Marathon, it was just simply, you can.
Just do it.
Yeah, exactly. There we go.
Possibly the best slogan in history.
Yeah.
I think.
Potentially so.
Before we get back to the episode, I want to tell you about something that's very exciting. GQ, one of my favorite magazines of all time, has decided to sponsor Untapped. If there's someone in your life who's into fitness and likes looking after themselves, but can be a bit of a nightmare to buy for, GQ has curated a box that's basically a complete wellness toolkit for men. You've got the Therabody Theragun Mini 2, which is amazing for muscle recovery after exercise. You've got the Studio C8 wireless earbuds for training or staying focused with active noise cancellation. A Humantra hydration trial pack to help you stay hydrated. What's this? Aventus. Creed Aventus. Should we have a look? The Y code. Well-kept advanced eye serum. Yeah, baby. This is a belter, this box. Any bloke receiving a gift, right, in a GQ box is going to think, this is sick. Then it's got all of this stuff in it. Let's have a look. Aspinalls of London wallet. My God, when you think it couldn't get any better. This box is worth over £500, but right now you can get it for the staggering price of just £195. That's around 60% off. If you want to treat yourself or buy a gift for someone special, check out the GQ box through the link in the description, and don't forget to use the code Untapped20 at checkout. It really is a banging deal. Have you ever wondered how much of your potential is being left on the table? I've spent a fair amount of time trying to optimize my training, recovery, and energy levels. And one of the biggest game changers has been making sure that I'm getting the right nutrients every single day. That's why I take Heights. It was actually my endurance coach who first recommended it, and I was genuinely surprised by the difference it made to my training, recovery, and overall performance. Heights is trusted by elite athletes and teams, including the Ireland rugby team and GB athletes preparing for the next Olympics. For me, there are two essentials: Heights Vitals and Biotic. Vitals cover the nutritional basics with omega-3s and 20 key nutrients to help support energy, reduce tiredness, and keep me feeling sharp and on top of my game. Then I take Biotic to support my gut, health, and immune system, so I know that I've got those foundations covered too. A few years ago, I didn't take any supplements. Now, I wouldn't be without them. I haven't missed a single day in the last 3 years. Listeners of Untapped can join me in their daily Heights journey with 20% off your first month of any subscription at heights.com, and just enter Untapped Pod in the checkout. Thank me later. But no, I'm interested in the Puma Fast R. I mean, it looks like a kind of the equivalent of a Lamborghini. You know, it's pretty, it looks incredibly aggressive. Is it the type of thing that you're running on it and you kind of look down and you can't believe how fast you're traveling type of thing, but it feels similar to running normally? Or
I don't know whether I've ever really had that with, I'm not like a shoe fanatic in the sense of, if I find a pair of shoes that are comfy, then I'm like, fine, perfect, I'll wear these, and probably alternate them with which ones are giving me blisters, which ones aren't, you know, whether they're sort of like muddy from like a rainy session or whatever, you know. I'm not super into it, but I think, yeah, they're quick, but also I think it's really important to remember that people ran really quick times before the really quick shoes. And, you know, my quick 10K, my quick half marathon when I was 18 were in a pair of like the Adios 3 racing flats. And I ran really well. I do think a massive part of it is now actually being able to train in carbons allows you to recover quicker, so therefore you can sort of get more out of your training week. But in terms of the actual running, you know, that comes from the training you've done, not from the shoes.
do you see a problem with wearing carbons often in that case?
I think it really depends on how much volume you're covering in a week. So for instance, I use them for my, speed sessions and interval sessions, but that means that a huge amount of my weekly volume is not ran in carbons. I think that, yeah, they can definitely be overworn when I see people wearing them for easy runs. You just think you're not allowing your lower leg muscles to really sort of work. And I think that that's really important. We know that there are links between carbons and lower leg injuries and them just altering where the load is shifted. So yeah, I think people can wear them too often, but equally, for a runner like yourself, like myself, for the interval sessions that you do, then yeah, if you've got them, wear them, but equally don't always wear exactly the same pair, mix it up, yeah.
I just find I get so much pain from not wearing the carbons. So I wear the Adidas Prime X3s, which are kind of full of tech and 50 mil stack and rods and plates, and that for me is like my kind of Batman outfit. Like I feel so comfortable in them. I love wearing them. I feel really fast in them. Like I feel really supported in them. I never feel any pain. It's almost, why would you wear anything else? And then I don't want to make these brands sound like they're not good shoes when they are, but like I'll wear the Vomero Pluses or like some Puma Deviates or whatever, and go for a proper run. And my shins and calves will just like really flare up as a result of not having that additional kind of tech and support. And I don't know, like I think some of it's in the head as well. Yeah. Like when you know that the session's going to be much harder because you're not wearing the shoe. Yeah. But then to your point, it's like all these incredible people, like a Stephen Scullion ran a 209 in Under Armour shoes that were not plated and a size and a half too big for him. Yeah. And it's kind of like, How's he done that?
And it's not long ago in the grand scheme of things, when we're talking about it, it's, sort of 5, 6, 7 years ago before the first carbons came out and those Nike 4%, were first released, and they were so hard to get hold of. And I've still kept a pair of mine because I'm like, these might be worth something one day. But there was definitely a time before that. And I think that it's one of those things where you're feeling the pain and it's feeling really difficult when you're not wearing these really high-tech shoes. And is that just because you've been conditioned to rely on them? Who knows? To some extent, yes.
Yeah.
But, it's really, really hard to know. But I do think that there's, just as we were talking about before with the marathon and discomfort, is that actually sometimes things not being perfect is the best possible thing that you can do.
It's just so painful sometimes.
But that's the whole
this
point.
This morning's run was just horrific. I went for I was running 5-minute Ks or 5:06s, and I genuinely felt like I couldn't go much faster if I wanted to. Really banged up, felt like the Tin Man, and like just full of pain and ache and misery. And I did a kind of slow, pathetic 8K, and for the rest of the morning was just like, great, I have made no progress, when I know I have.
Yeah, you need to take joy from that and think, I feel like this because I've been working so hard and been making the gains in sessions. And a massive part of it is, like that perspective. And equally, if you'd have had no watch on today and you'd have just gone out for a run and not known what pace it was, would you have felt better about the run?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's so funny that it's just, I describe running as quite cruel sometimes. It's kind of like you give yourself to it completely in the hope that you're rewarded with, the kind of gains that you would expect from the effort you're putting in.
Yeah.
And you are half the time, but then that one time when you're not, it's almost like, receiving lovely, beautiful comments from strangers, and then there's that one negative comment, and that's all you can think about when largely speaking, it's all positive and it's all great and it's all driving the right way. We've done some sessions recently where it's just been such a joy to look at the data afterwards. You're like, my God, 8 weeks ago, I couldn't have dreamt of running the session, and that was actually quite easy.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. But then if you'd given me 10 grand to run a sub 20-minute 5K this morning, there's no chance of that.
Yeah.
And like, that's like a warm up for me nowadays. So it's just weird. It just wasn't working.
Yeah. Some days I do think, especially in marathon training, it feels like you're running in somebody else's body.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's
well, you get that as well.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
It makes me feel
sometimes
quite a
you
lot
just
better,
think,
actually.
how on earth did I do, this 30K session feeling like I was feeling pretty smooth, in control, and then you go for an easy run a couple of days later and you feel so completely different, but you have to just ride the wave of it and really trust in the process. And that's definitely something that I've learned over the years and learned over the many marathon blocks, is that sometimes you can't predict how you're going to feel, and there's so many factors that go into it. And you could look into all the stats and sleep data and whatever, but sometimes it's just life, and life happens, and some days you feel fab and some days you just don't.
I suppose it's quite normal, is it? If you ran like a relatively hard 26K or a 30K, to then go for a run the following morning or whatever is going to feel different.
Yes.
Regardless of how fit you are.
Yeah, 100%. And I think as well that it's really funny how sometimes, and I think the fitter you get, that when it comes to a session day, you can sort of get yourself in the mindset and force yourself to do it and run really, really hard. But actually, if you'd have been doing an easy run that day, it would have felt so much worse, which is really interesting. Like yesterday, I had a double session day and I was in Wales at the weekend at Love Trails Festival and was running up and down the hills, absolutely hammering some really steep hills, which obviously we don't have in Battersea Park. So you've just become deconditioned to them. And my quads were in absolute pieces. And I know that if I'd have had an easy run, it would have been like an absolute slog and I would have probably really sort of not enjoyed it. But I had 2 sessions to do, one in the morning, one in the evening, and the warm-up, really, really tough. You sort of think to yourself, I actually don't know how I'm going to do this. But then you do those first few strides and you think, nope, it's a decision, I'm doing it.
It's amazing, isn't it? I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Where like, that you've got to go 2 whole, special gears higher than the warm-up.
Yeah.
The warm-up feels like hell.
Yes.
And it's, no, I'm there several times a week at the moment.
Yeah.
But it's, it is an amazing sport. This show has become a running show.
Yeah.
And it's just, I love hearing what people kind of gain from running. When did you first get called into Team GB?
That was 2019. I got my first GB vest, and it was for the World Cross Country Championships. I was in the juniors, so it was under 20. And yeah, it was an amazing experience. It was in Denmark. The course was really interesting. They'd made a man-made hill up at the side of a museum. There was water, mud, sand pits, and yeah, it was a tough race. But yeah, that was my first GB vest.
How did that go?
Really, really well. I finished, I'm pretty sure it was either 40th or 44th, which, you know, for my first ever GB outing, and oh my goodness, the year before I was absolutely nowhere near even contemplating that getting a GB vest would be a reality. That was pretty amazing. Yeah, I was really pleased.
And your 2:29 marathon, so what was your goal on the day?
On the day, that was Manchester Marathon 2022, and that served as the trial for the European Championships and the Commonwealth Games that year, as well as the European 50K Championships. And the time goals, if I'm right, it was 2:32 to qualify for Europeans, 2:34 for Commonwealths, and then the next person across the line after 2:34 would automatically qualify for the European 50K Championships. And I'd ran 2:34:30-ish in London Marathon 6 months before. So we were kind of looking at the Commonwealth Games qualifying time. So yeah, the goals were sort of there. But I'm someone who I don't really like to think too much about the specific numbers. If I train hard and race as hard as I possibly can on the day, then the outcome will be what the time is, type of thing. So as much as I'm sure my coach was like, this is what we're aiming for, I don't like to do that in my head. I will run hard and the time will be the outcome. So that's exactly what I did. And I had my watch showing just the single kilometre splits at the time. And I knew about, you know, what paces I've been doing in training and all that jazz. And it was more just the fact that the kilometres were repeatedly not getting slower, which was great. But I didn't really know what that time was going to come out as. So when I then saw the finishing clock and I was coming in and it was still on 2:28, because I ran 2:29:04. My goodness me, I wish I'd have sprinted a little bit harder in that last bit. But I was just so shocked because I thought, yeah, I'm probably going to hit the Commonwealth Games standard. You know, it seems like it's going well, but I had no idea that I was going to run 2:29. So
you were 5 minutes faster than London.
Yeah.
So, but you weren't aware of what your splits would add up to. You just held a faster pace and just kind of. That's incredible to me.
Yeah, the naivety to it was almost beautiful now looking back. But I was, you know, I had only just turned 22, which is so young to be, you know, in that position for the marathon. And yeah, it was really exciting. And I didn't want to put a crazy amount of pressure on myself. I knew what the pressure was and the potential of, if I ran well, that I would be either going to the Europeans or Commonwealths. You know, I knew that in the back of my mind. But if I put too much pressure on that, then I think it could have gone the other way. So I'm really glad that I ran it the way that I did, and it definitely paid off.
So at 2:29:04, you're running a 3:29 something average pace.
Yeah,
which is like that's a 17:35K 8.5 times.
Yeah, it was 17:37 was the exact splits through it.
It's just. God.
Which is crazy because I've actually only broken 17 for the 5K once. It's like I'm not a quick runner.
Well, I think you're quite, no, but like I struggle with that as well. I find the 5K just the most ghastly distance. I hate
difficult.
It kind of all falls apart. Like I can't hold that. I find it really difficult.
Yeah, I agree. I'm
not sure I could run one 17:35K at the moment, I don't think. So that's quite.
I think you'd be close. I think you'd surprise yourself.
I think in the right circumstances, 10 degrees, a good pack at that pace, maybe. Stephen wants me to try and crack 17 minutes before December. It's just like, I think that's a focus in itself, isn't it? Like I'm just, you know, it feels like it might detract from the old marathon training.
Yeah, for sure. But equally, sometimes it just comes, with the fitness. Even when you're not doing the real top end speed work, the fitness that you gain from quality marathon training is really, really incredible.
You can train hard, eat well, feel fit, and still miss what's going on inside your body. Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, founder of Do Health, told me that 46% of members had hidden cardiovascular risk that they had absolutely no idea about. You know that I track everything: sleep, recovery, training, and performance. But there's a difference between feeling healthy and knowing that you're healthy. I took my blood test last week and the results are in. I've also asked the AI to give me a breakdown of these results, and here they are. It says that they paint a really clear picture of someone who trains hard and eats plenty of protein. Tick. And my inflammation is optimal. Surprise, surprise. These are strong results. Thank you very much, Do Health. I also took the test to look a little deeper at things that you can't see on the outside, like testosterone, glucose levels, cholesterol, even my biological age. And then, this is the bit that matters, a personalised plan for what to actually do about it. So in the next 4 months, I know that I can improve my results, because this isn't just about your next race, it's about long-term health. Go to dohealth.co/untapped and use code UNTAPPED. I'm competitive, you know that, so go and find out your numbers and come and tell me how you get on. What do you value more? The long run around marathon pace or slightly below, or the faster speed stuff over, say, 10K?
I think if you're training for a marathon, or, even if you're not training for a marathon right now, but that's something that you want to do within, the next 6 months or something like that, there is so much value to having those hard long run sessions in there and keeping your body conditioned to not just being able to, because it's not about holding marathon pace for 5K. It's being able to hold marathon pace for 5K with 30K of fairly good quality running already in your legs, which I think that sometimes, people miss. If you're doing a session, the classic marathon session, 4x5K, it's all well and good holding really good splits for those first 3, but actually you need to be nailing that last one.
But also, I never really understand that session, because, of course you're running the 5Ks at greater splits than you will the marathon, but you're still including the kind of floats or the rest, whatever you give yourself, maybe 60 seconds, 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes between the sets. You're covering just over a half marathon. Where's the other half? Everyone keeps saying, well, if you can run, what was I told before Tokyo, which I guess ended up being right, but it can't work all the time, surely. I was told if you can run 4 times 5K at 4:05, considering that my marathon pace needed to be 4:10, right? It's not that much difference. And they were like, if you can pull that session off, then, you've got the marathon in the bag. I think that's a really dangerous way of thinking about a marathon, because, crushing 4 5Ks is great, but it's half of what you need to do.
I agree. But there is also the point in the sense of, and especially the quicker that you get the marathon, the more this applies, is that, and especially as I'm talking now as a female athlete as well, there is a limit to how much marathon pace work you can do in a session and recover from before marathon day, because it's such a big toll on the body. You almost have to believe that you're going to be able to do it, which is a really interesting way of looking at it. And, like I say, it doesn't apply to sort of everyone, but you can only put your body through so much in the preparation to then be able to recover from it and actually, go all out in the marathon. But that's when a massive part of it becomes the mental side of believing that you can do it. And it's really important to remember that doing those 4x5K, for instance, I'm sure that Stephen would be on a very kind of similar page to this, but you're not just doing 4x5K, you'd be doing 5K warm up, you'd be doing 4x5K, your recovery would be a K float, which would only be about 20 seconds a K slower than your marathon pace, and I would want you to not stop running for any of this. There's no stops for, it can be done very differently. You can run 4x5K and have 3 or 4 minutes of walking around between them, which is very different to floating at 20 seconds a K slower, where you're only just allowing yourself to recover and then you go in again, because the mental load that is entirely different to just, stopping and having a rest and walking around.
Have you ever in a race had to reset? So in some training sessions, when, back to what we were talking about before, when the mind isn't quite there, you can't quite find the pace. I find that if you slow it right down, even just for kind of 20 seconds, and you just clear your mind a bit, and you just take your foot completely off the gas, maybe have, squirt half a bottle of Lucozade into your mouth, have a gel, and just kind of reset and then go again, you can actually find the pace that you couldn't find before. And it's a proper, it could turn into a really different session quite quickly.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my first marathon was the Olympic trial event in Kew Gardens in 2021. So a really interesting experience for my first marathon. But equally, it was COVID. It was a really strange time for everyone. And, found out about this sort of 5 or 6 months before. And I thought, I was at uni at the time, nothing else going on in the world. What a great time for me to act as an elite athlete because there's nothing else going on. So that was hence why I, did that marathon, had just turned 21, and I had trained so hard for that, like so incredibly hard, especially for my age. And it's one of those funny things where, especially with marathon training, at that point, I didn't even post on Strava. The only person that knew who as hard as I was working was me and my coach, and I was in really, really good fitness and, stood on the start line, and it was kind of like, do or die in the sense of the qualifying time was 2:29:30, and what was I stood there for if I wasn't going to go for the qualifying time? So that's what I set out at in my first marathon, to go for that 2:29. And I hadn't practiced the fueling side of things enough. Fair enough, it was my first marathon, it was new to it. And I just simply hadn't taken on enough fuel. I was picking up my bottles of Molten 320, but the pace was that bit too fast for me to actually drink enough of it to get the fuel in to be able to, actually be fueled. So I was picking up the bottles and then sort of throwing them. And I got to it was about 20 miles, about the 32K mark. And I just had absolutely nothing left, couldn't see, was doing that thing of where you stop dead, run, stop dead, run. And luckily, because it was a 2-mile looped course, 13 laps, I got round to my coach at the next lap, stopped, stood still, had a conversation with him and said, I don't know what to do, I can't see. And he was like, I think you'll regret it if you don't finish it. So I walked and drank 500 mils of Morton, and then it was like a switch. And I was like, I am going to finish this. You're going to do it. You're finishing this. And I did. And I ran 2:38. And, it's one of those things where...
with a full meltdown and loads of walking and a meal, basically, you ran my current dream pace.
But I was, I'd set off very quick, and equally rightfully so, I would have regretted it if I hadn't have set off at that pace, because if I had have, absolutely nailed the fueling, I think I'd have ran a really, really, really amazing time that day. But it taught me so many lessons about fueling and taking it on. But yeah, that was definitely a case of if I hadn't have stopped and reset, I wouldn't have finished. I wouldn't have ran 2:38 for my first marathon.
Yeah, would have been a DNF. And that would have played on the mind as well.
Oh, yes.
It's an amazingly punishing distance, the marathon. It's a big mental game, that distance. What do you do to reframe your mind when you come up against it in training or in races?
I think it's really remembering the reason why you're doing it. And I always tell myself that it's an absolute privilege to be in the position doing exactly what I'm doing. So embrace it, sit in it and embrace it. I think that that's really, really, really important. And everyone will have their, different reasons why, and that's absolutely fine. But I think if you can't, there's that phrase where it's, suffering without meaning is just suffering, and it's pain without meaning is just suffering. So if the pain has meaning attached to it, then you're not suffering. It's okay. And I think for me, that's something that is so important, and I'll never let it go.
Do you listen to music when you run?
Only when I easy run.
What kind of music do you like?
80s to a bit of Fred again, musicals. Les Mis can get me through.
Frozen?
No, more like Evita, Phantom of the Opera, Les Mis.
I love all that. Do you listen to The Greatest Showman?
Not really.
It's quite good. It's good. Jacko can sing. Did you know that?
That's not like an unknown fact about Hugh Jackman that he can sing.
Hugh Jackman used to be my brother's PE teacher at Uppingham.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, then he went on to become a
Wolverine.
superstar. Wolverine. Very cool, isn't it? So you've seen these like ranking systems online, like, you know, the best amount of pints you can have is 2 pints. That's number one. And, you know, 5 pints might be down here somewhere because it's too many. What would you do? How would you rank your favorite distances in running?
Ooh,
1 to 3, your favorite distances.
okay. A mixture of training and races I'm going to do. Number 1 would be the marathon because it just has so much history. It's so special. It's such a beautiful beast that has to be number 1.
It is a beautiful beast.
It is.
That's a very lovely way to describe
Yeah.
the marathon. A beautiful beast.
Yeah, I think it shouldn't be feared, but it should be respected. And I think that, yeah, that's...
You're quite philosophical
Yeah, and
in
I
your thinking and your answers.
I
This
think
is very
that's what
refreshing.
running
We
is.
like this in here.
Yeah, I think that's what running for me is massively about, you know? And I think that it's something that is really important. If you took away every stat and every watch and every race start line, I would still go out and do it. And I think that that's when, you know, you'll go far in the marathon or far in running because it means more than any being attached to a number or you're worth being attached to a number. So that's why, like, for me, you know, yeah, like the marathon is a beautiful beast and that's why I love it.
So number 1, the marathon.
Number 2, a 10K, but not a 10K race, just a 10K run. Because a 10K run is always lovely. It's a nice amount of time to be running for. You feel like you've been out for a decent run, but also, you know, you don't have to sort of think about it too much beforehand. You feel good afterwards. You've had enough time to catch up with a friend, put on a good playlist. So yeah.
Can I interject just quickly before we move on to your third distance? You know, they talk about runner's high. I now know what that means,
Yeah.
right, since being in this block. Because before I used to be like, oh yeah, I feel good after a run, but people would describe runner's high. Like after some sessions, and I don't know if this is just me, but I don't think it is probably. I imagine this is what people mean by runner's high. I am actually high. Like, do you get that? Where like, I don't really know what yesterday I was in a mad rush to get this session done.
Yeah.
So we went out hard.
Yeah.
And like we did the session and it ended up being just under 18K and it was an hour and 11 minutes. And then I had like 5 minutes to get ready.
Yeah.
And then I had to line bike across town to get to this dinner meeting at 6:30. Like, you know, it was all just, and I was like rushing, not rushing, physically rushing, like rushing in like a drug sense. I was like colors were really bright. I swear
Yes.
stuff was like moving. Like I was like hallucinating and felt like actually high. Like it took me 20 minutes to calm down.
Yeah.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, I think so. And it's one of those funny ones, isn't it, where you'll never really be able to understand exactly what somebody else means. But for me, you know, runner's high and some real specific moments, you know, running across Tower Bridge in London Marathon, absolutely, you know, it's such an electric feeling, like the hairs on my arms literally standing up. And sometimes you get that, you know, out on a run on your own. For instance, when I was in Wales at the weekend, you know, 20K solo on my own, absolutely hammering it up and down the hills. I had music playing out loud from my phone. It was just me, could see nobody else around. And those senses of like, I'm really here. And that's when I feel my absolute most alive. And I just feel so lucky to have something that is, you know, good for me and free, that makes me feel so very alive.
Beautiful answer. And the third distance?
Difficult one. I would say 30K, a 30K run, because that's when, you know, you're in marathon training, you're feeling fit, you feel really satisfied afterwards. You know, it's a long time on feet, but yeah, I'd say 30K. You know, you put that on Strava and you think, yeah, that's a good run, that 30K.
Also a respectable beast.
Yeah.
Becky, thanks so much for coming in. It's been a great
Thank
pleasure
you.
to get to know you a bit. Awesome to put a conversation to a face. And I'll see you tomorrow, I would imagine.
Yes, see you tomorrow.